The WWE presented with a price tag of what we are apparently being told again is $50 million. The crown jewel event over there at the Mohammed bin Abin Arena. They weren't at the stadium this time. Does it get cold over there?
I was going to say, that was definitely the smallest building we've seen them run over there, right?
Well, but I know they're all in the desert and riding camels and things, but does it get cold to where they had to go indoors?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it was a temperature thing. I have no idea.
Well, they went indoors this time. I don't know what the weather's like. I don't even know what the dew point is.
Has anyone said this was the reason they were at the smaller indoor building, that it was because of the weather? Or are you just coming up with this?
Well, I'm thinking they must get kids wintertime over here. Maybe it's wintertime over there. They can't be freezing their fucking camels off. Anyway, but the crown jewel, they get $50 million twice a year to put these shows on in Saudi Arabia. And boy, howdy, they saw the Saudi Arabians coming down the road for this one. Now, there was a couple of good matches, but again, it takes a while now, even on pay-per-view, for anything to happen. You would think that you wouldn't have to sit through a lot of the gaga and just the gaga, but you do still, because it takes forever to accomplish anything on these programs. And did you notice the lighting of the arena also? I like blue. I like most of the colors. Chartreuse and magenta, not really much on those, but the lighting looked like a bowl of soggy Cheerios. It was just all a Nickelodeon thing everywhere. I expected somebody to get slimed. Because they got that much money, does that mean they have to use it all?
I'm a fan of most of the colors as well.
I'm a fan of most of the colors. But I mean, it was very bright, wasn't it? I don't mean bright light. I mean bright colors all over the place, pastels and chartreuses and things.
Well, I think that's part of why Saudi Arabia is doing deals like they're doing with WWE. They want to present Saudi Arabia as a big, bright place you can come and hang out for vacation and plant your money.
Well, that's the thing is they even had the spots where all the superstars are going, oh, it's first class here. It's great. The people are so nice. The weather's so good. The buildings are so beautiful.
That noon beheading was the best one I've ever seen.
Yes, the noon beheadings are always on schedule, and they promised we can go home this time, as long as we say these things. But anyway, they opened up the show with the world title match between Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. And I like Drew McIntyre more now than we have lately, because it's getting some critical raves that he's becoming more of a snotty bastard with an attitude and isn't just going to be a nice guy, baby kiss and baby face. And he's a good worker, and he's big, and he's got some gravitas to him. It's just, we've talked about it. Just old Drew McIntyre just hanging out, being a baby face and waving that sword around hadn't really been intriguing, but this is a little bit more interesting, right?
Oh, yes.
Or potentially wrong.
Well, I thought you were just saying that and going to move on. I didn't realize I was
I was going to take a breath. I'm doing most of the heavy lifting around here, so I had
it's your show. It's your show, but
yeah,
I agree. Look, Drew was dead as a babyface, and they made him the world champion. It was during the pandemic. There was no one there. When the fans came back, they didn't really react to him like a world champion. And a lot of that's not his fault. A lot of that's the way he's used. You could either keep going down the road of him being the babyface with the sword, or you can make him a heel and let his inner frustrations come out.
And I'm glad he's getting frustrated, but I'm getting a little frustrated too, because I still don't know what Seth Rollins' fucking gimmick is. I mean, he's a great athlete.
He's a kid. He's a kid who's just discovered Elton John.
I thought you were going to say LSD, but Elton John will work. Again, he's a great athlete. But now with this gimmick, and combine that with he has, for better or worse, the most modern style matches in the WWE. And to me, that means they all kind of look the same, and it's hard for me to critique because they just all contain a lot of moves and a lot of dives and a lot of the modern stuff of people taking bumps where they shouldn't take bumps. Or doing nonsensical things because the people go, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. Like Rollins gives Drew a superplex off the top rope. And as soon as they land, he holds on and rolls over. And they stand up, and then Drew, the guy that just got superplex, picks Seth up and gives him a fucking suplex. How does that make any sense? But they love to do these things these days. Anyway, there was dives, there was fighting on the floor, there was an apron bump, there was some 2 counts. And then there was the point where Drew begged Seth to get up so that he could knock him down again. But when Seth got up, because Drew had waited to tell him to get up before he came over and hit him, he ran into a super kick and a pedigree and a curb stomp, 1, 2, 3. And I was like, what the fuck? Apparently, Drew has still not signed his new contract. And with what they've been doing, it seemed like this might be a time where you'd want to put the belt on this guy. But apparently, if he hadn't signed, they're not going to do that. But so, after all this, he got beat with a super kick, a pedigree, and a fucking curb stomp. 1, 2, 3.
I think for now, WWE's ride or die with Captain Fantastic. That's what I think.
Well, they sure made Drew the brown dirt cowboy then. Because he had to wipe a bunch of that brown dirt off his face after that. And then he was forgotten because then here comes Damian Priest and he runs down to cash in the briefcase. He's got the briefcase. He's telling the referee. But at that point, Sami Zayn in a hoodie ran down and grabbed the briefcase and stole it and ran off with it out into the crowd. So apparently, Sammy the Syrian doesn't have as much heat over there as he used to because he went out in the crowd without getting knifed. But they flew him all the way across the fucking world to put on a hoodie and steal a briefcase.
Yeah, where else in Saudi Arabia can you grab someone's thing and run away and not get your hand cut off?
Especially if you're a fucking Syrian, apparently, or a Muslim, or whatever he is that they were mad at a while back. What did you think of this match? I mean, kind of like a longer Raw match with the guy that you thought might win. Maybe it would do some good, didn't win.
I think there's a couple different problems here. They're repairing Drew with a new gimmick, a new slant on himself. I mean, Damian Priest, just briefly, I'll just say, it kind of made him look weak. I didn't like that. Sammy runs off with his thing. Now we have him and Sammy. Have they not already been feuding? I don't even know. The problem is WWE has stuff that's super over right now. Guys that are super over, feuds, storylines. I hate to say that, but it's really more a feud. Like the Bloodline's not the Bloodline feud. It's the storyline of the Bloodline. But Rollins has a song that's over, and he's into it. When was the last time you cared about anything he was doing? Anyone he was working with, the program he had going on? When was the last time you really... I can't wait to see that match. I want to see what's going to happen when he finally gets his hands on this person, or they get their hands on him. It's been a long time. So they've spent a lot of time developing his personality. His personality's over. I almost feel like he wrestles an AEW-style match sometimes, than a WWE match. But Rollins really isn't in the mix of like top things, unless they do something with him and Roman down the road before WrestleMania or something. But he's over. His music's over. I don't know how over he is because he's not really programmed in a top spot, even though he's the world champion.
Well, that's the thing, is that nobody views him as the world champion because all that oxygen is taken up with Roman talking about the length of his reign and that he smashed everybody and that he held the unified title for however long and blah, blah, blah. But then they're advertised for people who might just tune in every once in a while. Wait a minute. I thought they were saying the other guy's been the champion for 3 years. Now this guy says he's the champion. It's confusing to the casual person, and the dedicated fans look at Roman as the champion, not Seth Franklin Rollins. because they just made that belt up 6 months ago.
Right? We didn't get into him and Nakamura. I don't even remember who he was feuding with before then. I mean, him and Cody was the last time I guess we really cared, but that was more because it was Cody's first feud coming in.
Well, and that was also before the world title number 3 was instituted. So it's not really him. I don't even know what this is supposed to be, but it's not him. It's just him cackling and whining and singing and acting weirdly for, as we've said, it's not even a handsome Jimmy Valiant acting weird where you go, okay, I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's on, but it's obvious that that's him. This ain't him.
It's like every villain from the 60s Batman show had a baby. And he acts like they did on that show.
And, well, at least, then since Riddle is gone, why can't Seth be the next guy to get sound effects fly out of his ass instead of the unicorns or the elephants or the rabbits or whatever? He can jump over the top rope and bang, kapow, splat. All that flies out of his ass.
I hope that when Tony makes his next big mistake, it signs Riddle. I hope that they use something flying out of his ass just so we get that lawsuit. Be ridiculous. That's our intellectual property. Anything flying out of this man's ass is the intellectual property of TKO Group.
Except I don't think AEW will be able to afford the production to green screen the shit coming out of his ass or whatever. Well, let's move on. Because that was the first match, and by the time that was over with, what we just described, it was 35 minutes into the program. And they followed that up with the 5-way women's championship match with Refrigerator Jax versus Raquel Rodriguez versus Zoe Stark versus Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley. And if there was any question whether or not the Saudi Arabian people are absolutely batshit insane, it was answered here because Rhea was having to wrestle in a full bodysuit. The others, okay. Refrigerator Jack, she got her Omar the Tent Maker special, that's fine. But Rhea? That deprived some of those Saudi Arabian youths of the best memories of their adolescence. But she did get a big entrance with robed Saudi Arabians with urns like druids.
Yeah, what was that?
I don't know. Probably had something to do with something they do over there. I'm not sure. But anyway, moving briefly through this, Raquel had Shayna covered, but Rhea gave Zoe the riptide off the turnbuckles on top of Raquel and Shayna, and then pinned Shayna 1, 2, 3. I'm sure you want to go into a detailed analysis of the fine quality work that led up to that from everybody except Rhea Ripley.
You know, I like when Shayna and formerly Ronda wear their judo. I don't know if Shayna did judo, just their MMA gi into these matches. It actually adds to it.
So that's pretty much the remark you have about the gi.
And this was the Judo Jean LaBelle moment of the show. That was it. I mean, it was, you know, it was a 5-way at 1:30 in the afternoon. I don't know what you want me to say.
Well, sometimes that can work out, but...
Yeah, behind the dumpster.
Behind the dumpster, but... So then they did the commercial about the stars telling us how much they love Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabian airline, by the way. So not only is the country beautiful, the people are nice, it's modern, it's friendly, everything's great, you're great, I'm great, we're all great. But their airline is the thing I want to fly on. It's what again, probably because they were allowed to go home on it.
Well, Jim, let's fly on to the next match.
Well, actually, a little bird told me this was going to be a good one. It was John Cena against Solo Sikoa. And by the way, did you notice Paul did not come out with Solo? He saved that for the end. But obviously, there was a huge response for Cena. These people, even there, and it used to be years ago that when you'd go overseas to an international market, they'd be a few years behind the times. And maybe the guy that was, over a number of years ago is still over, but your modern guys are not. Well, these people seem to know the modern talent. Sometimes they weren't over, but they knew them. But Cena's, again, a whole nother level of fucking star to these people. And it was a huge response. And they made the mention that the last time that Cena won a singles match was in 2018 in Saudi Arabia over Triple H. So, I guess they haven't seen him in a while over there. But again, they rang the bell. This was match number 3. They rang the bell at 1 hour, 10 minutes into the show. So this is taking a while to develop. As far as the match...
But no one there seems bored.
Well, no, because they're seeing something they never get to see. And it's like the Wembley crowd. They're seeing the big event that they, only rarely get a chance to see, and they're into all of that. But for us folks here at home watching on television in the United States of America, and having been longtime wrestling fans, this shit takes a fucking while to watch. It's slower paced and slower developing than any wrestling product that we've ever experienced in our lifetimes, isn't it, Brian? I mean, if you went back to the 40s and the early days of television, but even then they didn't have 10 minutes of entrance on television. They had a 10-minute headlock. So you want to watch them squeeze or you want to watch them walk? Anyway, for what was supposed to be done for an accomplishment of a point, building for the future, etc., this was probably the best match on the show. It was not the best match in terms of excitement because John Cena's a movie star. And he can't go out there and fucking take risks on killing himself because he's got other fish to fry. But what he did do was use his stardom in the wrestling business and his celebrity and star power to get a young guy over. And the match made sense, but it was safe. He ducked and avoided the spike. He worked on Solo's hand and arm, trying to neutralize the spike. Again, he remembers his Rip Rogers training. That's the first thing that you would do. Try to go after the guy's hand if he uses a fucking thumb as a weapon. And then Solo stopped him, and Cena sold and fought back from underneath, but made Solo the monster. And they kept going back to Solo trying to spike him, but John would escape in the nick of time. And then finally made a comeback, 5-knuckle shuffle, crossbody off the top, 2 count, rock bottom 2 count. He's looking good. But Solo foils the AA. It hits his own rock bottom. And they go back and forth a little bit more. And then suddenly, Solo out of the STF that Cena got, Solo gets the ropes, and then he hits the spike, and he sells his bad hand. Then he hits it again and sells it again, but he hit then 3rd, and then 4 fucking spikes. And then he just went off, and I don't know whether it was 7 thumbs or punches or clubbing overhand blows, but he hit him with that, and boom, and covered him 1, 2, 3. And that was pretty fucking decisive. They put Solo over as a monster killer, and the spike beat the bejesus out of John Cena, the greatest of all time. And now he's going to go back and make some more movies or whatever, and Solo is a bigger attraction for him because he's got that on his resume. And you can imagine what they're going to make the highlight package look like. Like fucking John was goddamn paralyzed. So it wasn't an exciting match, but it was the best match for getting something accomplished and the absolute right finish. And a big superstar agreeing to do it because it was best for business.
You couldn't have put someone over better than John Cena did there. And Solo is probably the guy to do something like that for. He's been used seriously. I think he's been pinned before, and I can't even remember exactly when or who did it, which is pretty telling.
Yeah.
He's been presented strongly, and he's been presented so strongly, you have to wonder down the road, how big is it going to be when it's him against Roman?
Well, they've got that in their pocket.
He destroyed
and that'll be
Cena.
after
He
the other
destroyed
Uso.
Cena. Like, Roman never beat Cena like that.
Who was it that did they do that with Brock and Cena one time? Where Brock just kicked the shit out of him. It's fairly one-sided. I believe it was Brock and Cena on pay-per-view like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think they did a one-sided one, but then Cena won.
Well, yes. Well, no, I think he beat him up and beat him, and then he came back and won later, didn't he?
Well, I don't know. We have to go back and check the files.
Have Kippelman do a search on that.
You got that, Kippelman?
And then Cena got an ovation and got to wave goodbye and walk out on his own power, but he was selling the throat and selling the beating the whole way. And Michael Cole got to put him over. That was his graceful exit. But that was, that was about as good a deal as you could do. And then, unfortunately, we go from the penthouse to the outhouse. We were not told or warned, I guess I should say, that this was going to happen, but we had an episode of Miz TV. And now they're switching Miz babyface. Has he ever been a babyface before?
It was Heyman and you. They put him in there with Waller. Waller's his Heyman.
I guess you're right. I told Heyman, I said, fucking Genghis Khan couldn't have turned me babyface, but you did. Well, it's the same thing. Waller is the only person more annoying than Miz, and Miz this more familiar to the people than Waller, so they've...
The fans were behind Miz because, again, it was about them battling over their interview shows like Piper's Pit versus The Flower Shop, Miz TV versus The Waller Effect, and the fans took Miz's side.
Well, and also Miz had brought out the star of the highest grossing Saudi Arabian movie of all time. It grossed 3 Twizzler sticks and a fucking gum wrapper.
Oh, come on.
His name was Abraham Al something or other. And
I'm not familiar with him, for the record.
I haven't seen any of his major motion pictures. Apparently he's a funny guy. That's what the announcers kept saying. Oh, he's hilarious. So as soon as they start to do their sit down, that's when Waller interrupted and called for his set to be brought to the ring, the potted plants, the posters, and that's what the bone of contention was. Miz and Waller knocked each other's talk show segments. And then Abraham chimed in with the hottest show in the WWE is Miz TV. And, of course, people cheer because he said it. But this is sad. 40 years ago, they had Piper, and now they have Waller. Piper, Waller. Piper, Waller.
More like Wallow.
So while they were wallowing in their Waller, Grayson Waller kicked Abraham. But then Miz kicked Grayson. But then Abraham kicked Grayson. And then Miz hit his finish on Grayson. And then Abraham took forever and gave Grayson a Arabian elbow. It was the Saudi Arabian version of the people's elbow. And this was, I'm sure the sponsoring group, the royal family liked it or whatever. And I guess the fans like Abraham, but this was not good for anybody in the United States. Were you in the United States for this?
Remember when Piper came back in 89 and he did Piper's Pit with Morton Downey Jr. and Brother Love?
Yes, and that was fucking brutal, and it lasted forever.
That's right.
This was not as good as that was, because at least it was Piper and Morton Downey Jr. in the ring, and Bruce was there too. He used to talk about that like, oh, it was so great. I didn't have the heart to tell him that we saw it down south when it happened, and we were all laughing at him for fucking weeks because even Piper couldn't save it. They couldn't rein Morton Downey in.
And as a fan, as a kid, it was so disappointing that that's how Piper's Pit returned. It was really disappointing.
Yeah. Bruce enjoyed it. But anyway, so there was a VTR of Logan Paul driving a race car through the desert there in Saudi Arabia. Apparently they got plenty of sand. And then he was driving through the streets of town, and he drove into the parking lot of the arena. And then he drove it into the arena and got a big pop. The thing that made this different than Edge a few weeks ago in AEW is he wasn't coming to save a friend who was getting his ass kicked. He was making a grandiose, prickish celebrity entrance in his fancy race car that they gave him for the occasion. Do you think anybody picked up on this difference of how he looked like a big fucking star and this was shot so well by professionals all the way from the desert through the city to the arena, and there was no glaring logic error like, weren't you supposed to be just coming down to help your friend?
I understand Logan shot it with Darby Allin at Gum Alley.
And that may be part of the difference also is even today, the layman, the person who's not that well versed in television can tell when somebody has shot shit on their own and when television professionals are doing it. And so they even do what AEW does and do it better. And they can get by with it. But that was Logan Paul's entrance for the United States title match with him and Rey Mysterio. Would you take a guess, Brian, as to what time the bell rang for match number 4 in this show?
Oh, I don't remember what time it was. No.
1 hour and 53 minutes into the telecast, match number 4. Whoever is training Logan Paul is doing a great job. And I can't give them all the credit because Logan Paul is either a natural, a huge wrestling fan, or both at the same time. And he's still green because he hadn't done this repetitively over and over in front of people. So everything is not smooth, but he's either doing or trying to do everything that he should do. He's either in the place or trying to be in the place that he should be. He's doing flips. He's doing power moves. He's doing basics of wrestling. I mean, you know, it's kind of spooky that a guy from a complete another industry, line of work, mindset, whatever, can come in and be a good enough athlete, but have a good enough eye that he can see the small things, or if he's not seeing them, but he's being told them, he is working on them harder and more successfully than the supposed professional wrestlers on AEW television that still aren't ready to get out of the indies. And it's an accomplishment. He's very, very good. Anyway, and Ray, as always, is not only the perfect guy to be in there to kind of keep things going in the right direction because of his experience, but he sells as an underdog in all of his matches because of the size difference, and that makes Logan Paul look bigger and more of a heel. And he's got Logan Paul wants to do all these moves because they're cool, as well as being able to be a money-drawing wrestler if he keeps, moving along at this pace. But I didn't mind it here as much as the thing with Ricochet because this is star versus star. And the match with Ricochet was just to do stunts. I think this was more, and this was also a title match more important because they're moving Logan Paul up, obviously, as we'll see in the finish in a second. And he couldn't be elevated by beating Ricochet. It was just a match to do cool moves and you tickle the people who like high spots. This was a money match. What'd you think of it?
I thought it was really good, and I've been a big fan of Logan Paul since he first got in there. He seems like he may be a heel in real life. CoffeeZilla.
That's what makes him good.
That's what I was going to say. CoffeeZilla has done videos about him and stuff, but like the classic guys you hear about in the old days, they were just versions of themselves, and it worked.
Yeah.
His character works. His promos work. His in-ring works. Physically, like you said, they said he was 213. You could say 230. I believe it. He's tall, and I don't want to say lanky, but he's got size to... He's got better size than most tall people. Maybe he's on the gas. I really don't know.
Well, he probably is.
But physically, he looks good in there. He gets everything down. He's really, really good. If he was doing this full time, he'd be one of the best heels. He already may be one of the best heels in the business.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Logan Paul is a modern nature boy Buddy Landell with better genetics and fewer outside the ring bad habits.
That's right. If instead of cocaine, Buddy was doing crypto scams,
yes,
they'd be just alike.
But they're naturals in the ring, both personalities and athletically.
And there are just people like that. I mean, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you talk about people like Bobby Eaton or Terry Gordy, there were some people that just got it right away, no matter what age they got in. They got it. Kurt Angle, they got it right away.
Yeah. But I mean, personality-wise also, because whereas Bobby and Terry were the sweetest people in the world outside the ring, Buddy and Logan Paul, you can tell, are fucking shysterish, goddamn braggadocious, egotistical. The bad side can come out. They're natural heels. They want to kick the fucking basketball away from the kid or whatever. But anyway, in the finish of this thing, one of Logan Paul's miscellaneous stooges, I guess in his periphery, comes to ringside and hands him a set of brass knucks. But Rey Mysterio shoves him and he drops the knucks to the floor. The stooge goes for him, but Escobar appears and stops the stooge, grabs the knucks, puts him down on the apron of the ring and chases the stooge out of the arena. But Logan Paul picks the knucks up behind the referee's back and nails Rey Mysterio with them. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Could this be finally the tipping point where we see what's going to go on between Escobar and Mysterio? Because something's up. And at the same time, Logan Paul is now holder of one of the more prestigious belts in the company, so he's going to be more regular, and they're going to use him at a more featured level.
Here's how it should play out. Rey Mysterio is going to get all heelish, because otherwise you can't do it, and say, why did you leave the brass knuckles on the apron? Why didn't you slide them to me? Why didn't you do something with them? You left them there, they got involved. And Escobar could say, Rey, I've talked to my attorney. Contractually, you are still the champion. This is the United States Championship. This was Saudi Arabia, not part of the United States. You are still the champion.
Boy, you know, that's a natural segue into a spot for Stephen P. New, but this isn't the drive-thru. At newlawoffice.com, 877-50-STEVE. But you may be right there. There may be a loophole. He may be the Saudi Arabian champion.
If anything happened with Rey or Escobar coming out of that, how does it make Rey look good? If he would, right? He can't be mad about, what's he going to be mad about exactly? The knucks being left there?
Well, I've got to be honest. I think at first I was thinking that they were trying to anoint a new babyface Hispanic hero in Escobar by having him validated by Rey Mysterio. But the more that I see of this, something's going to happen where Escobar stabs Rey Mysterio in the back, because they cannot make Rey a heel. But there's going to have to be some conflict. And they teased it a time or two before, I think. And then there was a time where Rey got the concussion and they had to end their match early. We don't know exactly what was going to happen there. I don't trust Escobar. Something about him don't sit right with me, Brian.
Well, remember,
something's going to go on.
Remember, before the LWO, he was a lucha suit.
That's right. And you can never trust them lucha suits.
That is still the best name you ever came up with, because it actually works. Like, that'd be a great tag team name, the Lucha Suits.
Well, and the Street Profits are trying to take a copyright infringement there, now that they've dressed up. Nevertheless, moving on, I know you're going to have a bunch of comments about the next match that came up for the Women's Championship. One of them, Bianca Belair against Io Sky. Brian, give me your thoughts on this contest.
My thoughts are that I really enjoyed the last time they wrestled. I think Io's really good. I think Bianca's really good. And there was just the Bailey bunch beatdown backstage. There were other B's in there, and I'm forgetting them now. But To be honest and to be fair to the ladies, I was planning on returning to this match. I had a lot of editing and stuff.
You were going to come back. You were washing your hair.
Because I didn't want to half watch it in and out. I had to like really sit down.
You'd rather not watch it at all.
No, I'd rather give it time so I could actually see what's happening and appreciate it from the level of appreciation that I'm sure these women want their work to be evaluated from.
And appreciated by.
Yes. Right.
So you're going to, next week on the program, you'll have gone back and had time then to watch it.
Unless it's a really busy week and we just don't have time to talk about it on the show, things, animals dying and cobras.
Sometimes things come up.
That's right.
Well, Kairi Sane returned and helped Io Sky win. They beat Bianca Belair, and Kairi Sane is even more microscopic and minute and amoebic in size than Io Sky is. She's a very slight girl. So then we got to...
Kairi Sane was something that Carrie Silkin's accountants never called him.
Kairi Sane, question mark? Anyway, we got to the double main event. It's about darn time. And the first match of that was Damian Priest against Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare. And he made the entrance, and you've got the Saudi Arabians singing Cody's song about being a proud American show-stealing fellow.
Is that what that song says?
Well, he's going to steal the show, and he's going to do this and do that, but he's the American Nightmare.
But I don't even think the song says anything about he's an American show stealer.
I'm a proud American. I'm going to go and steal the show.
I was like when Jim Duggan would get the Canadian fans to chant USA.
Hey, actually, when the Midnight Express, this was the first time that Crockett went up to Winnipeg, and the Bushwhackers, the sheep herders, were still in Crockett before they'd gone and become the Bushwhackers, Butch and Luke. And we wrestled them and we were the baby faces in that equation, and wrestled them in Winnipeg and got the crowd to chant Canada, Canada, and they were covering their ears and yelling and everything. Anyway, it was funnier if you were there.
And then look at how Canada repaid you. They kicked you out of the country.
They repaid me in scorn. So Damian Priest jump-started this match with Cody Rhodes. We were now 2 hours and 45 minutes into the show. And this one, I thought, again, was the most exciting in-ring match of the night, just standing on its own. LA Knight and Roman Reigns drew the money. John Cena's match got the best point across. I thought Priest and Cody, and Paul and Ray was very good, but Priest and Cody was the best, just in-ring exciting match. Cody's over. He's the best babyface right now. LA Knight is nipping at him, but at the same time, I think there's room because Cody is like the classic babyface and LA Knight is like the Attitude Era babyface. And those can coexist. They're not doing each other's shtick, right?
They can be friends.
They can be friends, too. And then you can easily tell them apart. But anyway, Cody sold the bad ankle from the attack by the Judgment Day. And they kept it moving. They didn't do ridiculous amounts of fighting on the furniture. There's one point they were out there on the desk for a while and they weren't counted out. That was a little much, but they keep the fucking action going. Cody made a little false comeback at one point and then got stopped and then got some more heat on him and then he made a bigger comeback. It was a good match up and down through. And then finally, Cody hit the crossroads. And both of them were selling, and here came Finn jogging down and drawing the referee so that JD Funko could come in. But Cody nailed him. Priest got a choke slam and got a 2 count. And then Finn called Dominic out, and he came out bringing a chair, but Jey Uso came out and stopped him and stopped JD McDonough and Finn and chased them all out. And at that point, that's the only thing that I really... It's become a thing now. Used to, in wrestling, when everybody ran down, the interference came, you're pretty much going home. Your clock was ticking. Everybody's interfering. The people are yelling as loud as they're going to yell. You're going to do your finish. You're going to get out of there. And then to cross people up with what they expected was going to happen, they started doing the deal where, okay, every once in a while somebody will run down, do something, but get chased off, and the match will go on. And if they've done a really good job of having a match and they've done that interference bit, when the people see that it's going to continue, they'll kick it into a higher level of reaction. And it's another gear. And it works in some cases. But then it became a thing where now they think they got to do that all the time. And so what happened was a bunch of people ran out. There was a flurry of activity. And then all those people get chased away. And then the match is still going on. And it's going to go another 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. That's where, to me, they start losing the people that they had. Right? But they did more back and forth. And then finally, out of whatever, Cody just hit 3 crossroads in a row. 1, 2, 3. They had him going. It was back and forth. And yes, but it's awful hard to goddamn follow multiple people running down and multiple people fighting on the floor. And then they all just disappear and nobody tries to do anything else. And you go another 3 minutes. And then just beat somebody with your finish. See what I'm saying to you?
Yeah. It's actually more like a WWE of, 10 years ago or something. I think Cody, in terms of top babyface, he is still, and he is in danger of losing it if he doesn't do something else. They got to get him to do something other than the Judgment Day for a while.
He's gotten a little sidetracked with those folks, and I know they don't want to, you can't burn out the thing with Roman, but that's going to have to be addressed at some point. And I guess it may be when we find out whether or not, Roman or Rock's going to come back and wrestle Roman. So basically, best in-ring match so far, the modern finish for me took a point off.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And I guess they're doing Damian Priest and Sami Zayn now. And Cody's got to do something other than the Judgment Day, like I said before. And it can't be Bloodline right away. I don't know what it is in between. Unless CM Punk comes back, but we'll see what happens.
Well, Survivor Series is right around the corner.
Randy Orton.
And I was talking about Punk in Chicago. But Orton would work. At least they've got options. But, speaking of options, the time for our main event of the evening, for the real WWE title, let's face it, the one everybody recognizes, Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman against LA Knight. And everybody was worried, well, and you mentioned, is this going to be a throwaway? Is this going to be LA Knight's only chance? They did everything they could to make him competitive here and to give him every out that he didn't win the belt. And I thought this was a refreshing Roman Reigns match because it was like 20 minutes bell to bell. It wasn't 40 minutes of just constant on and on. They kept it moving, and they got the point across, and LA Knight was competitive the whole way through. Again, the bell for the main event came 3 hours and 15 minutes into the show, and this was only the 7th match. And Roman Reigns' entrance was almost 5 minutes long by itself, but at least they kept it moving, and both guys were over, and the issue was over. And LA Knight opened up hot, which he had to, but every time Roman would stop him, he'd slow it down, but LA Knight would fight back, and they would keep him in the fucking match. And at no point was he really, being toyed with or whatever the fuck. He was selling, but he was fighting back. And again, when Roman gets heat, he milks it. It's methodical, but they didn't let it go so long that they're. Remember that one match? Who was it? Was it with Cody, or was it where the trash talking was endless and it just kept going on and on?
There's been a few of those. I think maybe once with Jey Uso, maybe one with Sammy at some point.
Yeah. But anyway, nevertheless, they did a nice yay boo exchange, which LA Knight came out on top of. They did some 2 counts. The people were into it both ways. LA got to do his leap up and superplex, the LA elbow, another big 2 count. Solo comes out with the referees and the agents trying to hold him back. And Jimmy Uso comes out the other side and pulls Roman to the floor. So then LA grabs Jimmy Uso and he's going to pull him into the ring, and Roman hits LA with a punch and a spear and gets a 2 count. And then gets back on LA Knight. And again, all the interferers were gone. You didn't see anybody. So Solo, the referees, the agents, blah, blah, blah. Roman gets a front face lock, the guillotine to you MMA fans, and holds that for a while. And then LA hot shots him and hits his finish on Roman Reigns and has the cover. And Jimmy, who's been hiding somewhere, was still there and put Roman's foot on the ropes. So LA Knight hit his finish and had him covered. Roman didn't kick out, and it took the interference of the fucking heel to get the rope break. And at that point, LA bails out on the floor and beats up Jimmy and does the heads to the desk, and then Roman's out there and he grabs and does it to Roman too. Suplexes Jimmy through the desk, and then Roman comes from the back and spears LA Knight through the barricade, rolls him into the ring and hits him with another spear, 1, 2, 3. So thankfully better and shorter than many of the long world title matches that get overdone. But I wish that they hadn't speared everybody through the goddamn barricade, because this is a place where, yeah, okay, that's a fluke. It never happened in a million years again. That would have benefited LA Knight if we hadn't seen this how many dozens times now. But still, they gave him every out in the world.
Good match. I'm not crazy about him losing a match right now, but I think he could probably talk his way out of this, and the fans won't really care, as long as there's something to do with him next. And we'll see what happens.
I'm thinking there ought to be campaigning for a rematch. And whoever Roman has next before a big event like WrestleMania or whatever, maybe that's where LA Knight comes out and tries to help that person out and stays in the craw of the bloodline.
Would you consider for Survivor Series, since it's a different model and you don't have to really get a bunch of buys, and you already know you have tickets sold, a classic Survivor Series match?
Ooh, LA Knight and a bunch of baby faces against, well, who is Roman, Solo, Jimmy? He needs another one, doesn't he?
And then they need a couple of hired assassins.
Calling Jacob Fatu. My
thought was, this is a way you don't blow through another singles main event. You can have someone get a pinfall because it's a Survivor Series type match and there's eliminations as opposed to the end of the match. There's a lot you could do there to extend things without having to blow through another big match.
Well, but I hate to do it, but I'm going to have to take the piss out of that, because Roman Reigns is not at the Survivor Series.
Oh, I didn't realize that, no.
I heard that Roman is not booked at Survivor Series, and he'll next be at something in December.
Christmas?
Well, he'll possibly be coming down your chimney, but yeah, it's going to be a while before we see him again. So that kind of puts a crimp in that.
Well, like they always say, how can I miss you if you don't go away every 3 weeks?